Support my Ko-fi account. Link will be in the description.
His name is Henry. He's all about those classics. Dust off the old ones and gives them shine. He finds some goodies and finds you some baddies. And reviews ones folks from forgot. His name is Henry. He's over the
Can't be done, I tell you. Can't be done.
20th century reviews are here. 20th century reviews are here.
Hello, I'm Henry R. Mockingbird, your host with the mustache. And today, for this review, I'm doing another crossover with a returning guest. Welcome back to the show, Silver the Hedgehog.
Thank you for having me on your show, Henry. I'm actually really glad you wanted to do a crossover, because not only did we both review the first Topper, but I think that's how we both met. So this feels kind of poetic.
It's like poetry. They rhyme. Let us dive in to the sequel to Topper. Topper Takes a Trip. Marion must perform one good deed, so she decides to help the Topper's marriage from divorce. Mrs. Topper takes a trip to Paris, while Marion and Mr. Topper follow her to Paris along with Marion's dog. So, what are my thoughts on Topper Takes a Trip? Well, I think it's just as good, if not better, than the original. Well, those are my thoughts on Topper Takes a Trip. Let us hear Silver's thoughts. Silver, what are your thoughts on this movie?
Well, let me just start by saying that I think it's kind of strange that this movie is in the public domain, while the first movie is still copyrighted. Because honestly, I kind of like this one a little bit better. If you saw my review of the first movie, you probably know that I found it to be kind of meh. It wasn't bad, but at the same time, I didn't care for it enough to watch it again. So I'm going into the sequel with no high expectations or low expectations, which I feel is a good spot to be in.
The film was produced by Hal Roach and was directed by Norman Z. MacLeod, not to be confused with Connor MacLeod, who also directed the Marx Brothers Monkey Business and Horse Feathers, Road to Rio, and the 1933 Alice in Wonderland, and It's a Gift.
One thing about this movie that I have mixed opinions on is that Marion is the only ghost from the previous movie who returns for this film. I don't know how it was in the book because, like the first film, this film's also based on a novel. If you saw my review of the first movie and you're wondering why I didn't mention that, I forgot.
And just like in the last movie, the effects were done by Roy Seawright. He used an effect called matte paintings, and where a mat would cover everything except the actors. It would be placed in front of the camera. Later, an artist would paint the surroundings on a separate glass mat and then combining the two images together into one to make it look like it was all one shot. Seawright also did effects for films like March of the Wooden Soldiers, Chums at Oxford starring Laurel and Hardy, and 1,000,000 Years BC, and also did effects for the first movie. For this movie, he used rotoscoping for the ghost effects. And this film won an Oscar, and it was definitely well deserved because the effects in this movie are even superior to the effects in the first film. The only actors from the first movie to reprise their roles are Roland Young and Constance Bennett, as well as Alan Mowbray and Billy Bird, who was also Glinda in The Wizard of Oz.
That's a choice.
Wrong clip. Here, let us bring in this one.
I'm a little muddled.
The only cast member from the first movie who doesn't return is Cary Grant.
Apparently, they tried to get the actor who played George in the previous film, Cary Grant, to return for the sequel, but they were unable to. I believe movie sequels were a new thing in the 30s, so I get why they didn't just recast him. But at the same time, having Marion be the only ghost who returns just feels odd, especially when we were shown that George existed in the flashback.
Oh well, at least they gave good old Cary Grant consent to use his scenes. This film, I don't know what the box office numbers were or what the critical reception was, but it must have been successful given how a couple years later it got a sequel called Topper Returns. We open with a court case between Mrs. Topper and Mr. Topper.
One thing that I think is worth pointing out is that the movie has a recap of the first movie when Topper's in court. Keep in mind, this movie came out in the 30s, and home media didn't exist back then. Back then, if you missed a movie in theaters, you missed a movie, period.
And we've seen that he's grown since the first film and is more willing to expect the unexpected. During this scene, we get to meet the villain of this film, sitting next to Mrs. Topper, Mrs. Parkhurst. My biggest problem with her is that she never gets her comeuppance despite putting Mr. and Mrs. Topper through so much trouble. And we have James C. Martin playing a court guard. For those who don't know, James C. Martin was in the Three Stooges shorts. You might be familiar with this clip if you're a hardcore Three Stooges fan like myself.
Another thing that I want to point out is that when I first saw the court case at the beginning of the movie, I thought it was a bit cringe.
Will you tell the court in your own words how Mr. Topper abused you?
Why, he didn't know such thing. How can you say such unkind things about him?
Your Honor, I'm afraid my client is a little beside herself. Nervous strain and all. And is it your opinion that the defendant was ever cruel to his wife?
He certainly was.
Did he ever beat her?
Of course.
But as I watch the news and I watch those videos from those YouTube channels that talk about current events, cases like this are probably more relevant than they've ever been before. So I guess that's actually appropriate.
Spoiler alert to anyone who hasn't seen the first film. The first movie ends with George and Marion going up to heaven. So, what does this movie do? It decides to pull a Bride of Frankenstein and just rewrite the ending of the last film, and we see Marion. Despite the ending of the last film indicating that she would be up in heaven by this point. But, as my old friend Ryan Camp would say, continuity schmonuity. And speaking of continuity, she has a dog this time around. Yep, Marion has a ghost dog now. No backstory, no explanation. He just appears out of thin air, quite literally. My only guess is that they wanted something akin to the Thin Man dog, and I know I can't be the only one thinking that because he's literally played by the Thin Man dog. But unlike in that movie where he had some kind of personality, he's just there to do stuff like what Cheetah would do in the Tarzan movies. Just cause shenanigans. Thing is that Cheetah wasn't only there for the comic relief. He actually played a role in the stories of those films. Heck, even Toto did the same thing. There is no reason for this dog to be in the film, but on a more positive note, he is one of the better effects in the movie, and there are a couple of jokes that do get a legit laugh out of me, like whenever they're walking him off the plane and he's invisible. And he does contribute one part in the story. He does take down the bad guys, but that could have literally been done by Marion, and it would have the same effect. And speaking of Marion, unlike the last film, this movie doesn't waste any time getting to the shenanigans, as she literally scares a girl in the woods right out of her skin.
I like how the movie doesn't wait until 34 minutes in to give us some shenanigans. One of the biggest issues I had with the first movie was how slow it was to get going. And even though this movie does take a few minutes, it gets to the humor a lot sooner. And I'm glad too because the shenanigans that George and Marion did in the first movie while they were ghosts, I think that was the most entertaining part of the film. Another thing that I think this movie did better than the first one was that, even though I still don't think love triangles are that funny, I do like that it played a more important part in this story.
After Topper gives the lawyer an invisible sock in the nose, he heads to the bar where we see penguins. Huh, Gary's in this movie?
Oh hey! I didn't know Gary the Penguin was in this movie.
You're Silver the Hedgehog. Oh man, I was expecting Shadow the Hedgehog.
Story of my life.
All things considered, this whole bar scene is hilarious. I especially love the bartender's reaction to seeing all this stuff. Like when Topper orders a martini and orders two of them, and Marion starts drinking the martini invisibly. Afterwards, the bartender has to look at his own reflection in the mirror to make sure he's not going crazy. There's also a pretty funny bit where Topper mistakes the jukebox for the phone. And every time he turns the dial, the music starts blasting.
The part at the bar I think was kind of funny. It started off a bit meh for me, but it got funnier when Topper called his home and asked to speak to himself.
He said Mr. Topper isn't at home.
Well, isn't he?
Are you sure, Wilkins?
I'm positive, sir.
Just tell him to call me if you find out where I am. Hmm? Thank you, Wilkins. He says he doesn't know where I am.
Of course not, Toppy, because you're here.
Oh. Oh, well, in that case, I better tell Wilkins where I am so in case I want to call him back.
It's not explained why, but I think the idea is that he's so drunk that he can't think clearly. If that's the case, that cracks me up.
After that bit of confusion, Topper and Marion head to the bank to fetch Topper's password for the trip. The lights go out, the police go in, as well as Topper and Marion being locked inside the vault. The police come along and throw what looks like a gas bomb. Smoke goes out, Topper goes out, and away, Topper goes. He arrives in Paris, France, and meets the manager, who is played by Franklin Van Born, who was also a manager in the film International House, where he played a manager as well there, too. Where in that movie, he gets this funny clip with W.C. Fields.
Hey, where am I?
Woo-hoo!
Woo-hoo to you, sweetheart. Hey, Charlie, where am I? Woo-hoo! Don't let the posy fool you.
After some pretty funny hijinks, with Topper and Marion getting room service, both of them roll out to the casino to get some money, and also Marion becomes Topper's good luck charm, as every time he spins the wheel, or at least the gambling wheel, Marion has the ball float and land on the right spot, having him win every time, as well as Marion becoming invisible and stealing one of the bad guy's swim trunks, leaving him bare naked in the sand.
Okay, in my review of Topper, I said that Marion is what Rouge would be like if Sonic was alive in the 30s. At first I thought that was a little brash, but when Marion does things like get people into trouble, cheat at gambling, and steal things like that, do you really blame me?
We even get an invisible fight scene between Topper and the butler, where Topper tries to knock the butler's block off with the aid of Marion. And while this invisible fight scene isn't on the level of, let's say, the invisible fight scene in Abbott and Costello, Meet the Invisible Man, it's still rather enjoyable.
Another thing that I think was a slight improvement over the first film, although I do still have some nitpicks about, is that what Marion's trying to do to help Topper is actually more relevant since she's trying to save his marriage and clear his name. My only problem with it is that I kept thinking to myself, have you considered this other possibility? Show everyone you're a ghost and use it to help your friend? I'm pretty sure if you became visible in front of that judge and explained what happened and that Topper was not cheating on his wife with you, I think he would listen.
Yeah, seriously. There are so many moments in this film where Marion can reveal that she's a ghost, but for some reason just chooses not to. With stuff like this, you're not immersed in the film's world. You're more so asking questions to elements that do not add up.
I know that it technically makes sense for the movie, since if she did something like that, they'd probably have to rewrite the script. And again, I don't know if that's how it was in the book.
Well, I don't think it's better than the first movie like Silver. I really still find this a good sequel to the first and still really enjoyable. I give it 5 gold stars.
Overall, like I said, I like this movie a little better than the first one. It has a lot of the same problems that the first one does, but at least it went all the way with its humor. It's just that the humor is based on things like divorce, false accusations, and, well, other things I don't usually find funny. But for what it is, it's not bad. I doubt I'll watch it again, but I'm glad I watched it once. Overall, I give Topper Takes a Trip 3.5 stars out of 5.
Well, that's all our thoughts on Topper Takes a Trip. Well, I like to thank Silver for being a part of this review.
Yeah, thanks for having me for this episode, Henry. I had a lot of fun, and I hope that you did too. Ugh. Sorry, Robotnik's attacking the city again.
Well, have a good time fighting Dr. Robotnik. As for me, I'm Henry R. Mockingbird, your host with the mustache, signing off.